Meanwhile, the Nigerian Minister for the capital city, Bello, believes the relationship between China and his country will grow in strength and continued engagement and investment.
In Nigeria, we value the relationship with China very, very closely and very highly. As the FCT, we have a number of projects going on in the FCT handled by Chinese companies, spanning the area of massive infrastructure in terms of roads, water network, and of course the Abuja Light Rail. We have three key critical areas where we need to explore. The first one is food security for us in Nigeria, because your country, China, has been able tremendously over the last 30 years to be able to have food security because of its population size, and partner with local businessmen to put up manufacturing enterprises that can create goods and services locally here in Nigeria. The third one, of course, is to develop and cooperate in infrastructure. Infrastructure is very important. You've done it very well in your country, so you can do it here also.
For more on this now, I'm joined by CGTN's Jane Keo. She's in Beijing following the FOCAC development for us. Jane, the coming 2 days will be very significant for China-Africa cooperation. What's the latest on the preparations for the FOCAC summit?
Well, Beatrice, as you can imagine, those preparations are in top gear. We've certainly seen increased security presence in and around Beijing, particularly when the hotels that are hosting the FOCAC delegations. Now, the African leaders, the African presidents have been arriving here since last week. We've also heard that several of them have been meeting with President Xi Jinping. Today, he met with Sudan's Omar Hassan al-Bashir. We certainly expect many of such meetings to be held over the next few days. We also had a ministerial summit that was chaired by China and South Africa. Of course, we'll talk about this much later. And this was basically laying the groundwork for this very important summit that begins tomorrow. Beatrice?
Jane, so what are the main items on the summit's agenda? We do know that there's going to be a Beijing declaration that will be issued at the end of the summit, but what are the main items that you're aware?
Well, one of the main topics on the agenda will, of course, be the Belt and Road. Of course, this is a major flagship project for the Chinese government that seeks to increase connectivity among countries through infrastructure. Now, so far in Africa, we've got 3 countries on board. That's Kenya, Djibouti, and Egypt. There are hopes that Ethiopia and Tanzania will be joining the bandwagon. They're going to be joining this movement. Of course, infrastructure is key in terms of spurring economic growth and development in Africa, but much more still needs to be done in terms of employment. Now, the other issue likely to come up is, of course, industrialization and manufacturing, which have somewhat become priority area in many African countries. Just as an example, Kenya's Big Four agenda has, of course, prioritized industrialization, putting it at the forefront. Now, China does, of course, play an important role in terms of promoting industrialization in Africa. We've seen pledges in the past, in the last FOCAC summit, where President Xi Jinping pledged to build more industrial parks. We certainly expect many of these pledges to come in terms of financial and technical assistance. Now, the other issue, Beatrice, that may come up or may be on the mind of the participants in this FOCAC summit is, of course, that of debt sustainability, but we certainly have to wait and see.
Well, and you've just mentioned, Jane, though, that ahead of the FOCAC summit, China's foreign minister has also been meeting his counterparts from Africa. What more can you tell us about those meetings?
Well, indeed, Beatrice, that was the 7th ministerial conference, and this is a meeting that's basically meant to lay the groundwork. And what happens is that the foreign minister, Wang Yi, was co-chairing this meeting with South Africa, and they were meeting the more than 50 African foreign affairs ministers, basically to look back, to assess the pledges that were made in the last summit, that is in 2015, and come up with a draft that will be discussed over the next 2 days in light even of that declaration that will be made at the end of the summit. Beatrice.
All right, Jane Keo joining us there from Beijing. Thank you.